The awakening, the invisible one, in the heart of a glimmering metropolis stood the towering office of Hawthorne Beck, a multinational corporation known for its cutting-edge technology and international influence. On the surface, the building exuded prestige. Its glass walls shimmered in the sunlight, and inside, sleek surfaces and polished marble floors reflected the constant hum of ambition. Yet amidst the dazzling offices and towering skyscrapers was a hidden truth, one that very few saw and even fewer cared to acknowledge. In this shining fortress of corporate power worked Evelyn Bennett, a janitor. Every morning, like clockwork, she entered the building before the first rays of sunlight could touch the ground. The bustling city outside seemed far away, distant and disconnected from her own reality. As she stepped into the near-empty halls, she was already preparing for the long hours of sweeping, mopping, and dusting. To most of the executives, she was a mere shadow, a nameless worker whose presence was overlooked, ignored, and largely forgotten. Evelyn didn't mind the invisibility. It had always been like this. She had spent her life in roles that required her to blend into the background, an unnoticed, unimportant figure. But inside her, she carried a deep, burning awareness of what was truly happening behind the sleek facades of the corporate world. The inequality, the exploitation, and the toxic culture that bubbled just beneath the polished surface. It was on an ordinary Thursday morning that everything changed. Evelyn was pushing her cart down the hallway of the executive floor, as she often did, gliding over the polished tiles with the quiet hum of her cleaning supplies. She knew the routine, knew exactly when the executives would rush into their high-powered meetings and when they would scatter to their private offices. But this day felt different. As she approached the CEO's office, a door slightly ajar revealed a conversation that would change the trajectory of her life forever. Inside, Alan Greaves, the CEO of Hawthorne Beck, sat with two other high-ranking executives. Their voices were low, but Evelyn had sharp hearing, and she caught every word. "Next week's shareholder meeting," Alan Greaves said, his voice dripping with authority. "It's crucial. If we don't take action now, we risk losing control. We need to get rid of the distractions, anything that threatens the bottom line." One of the executives, a woman with platinum blonde hair, leaned in closer. "But we've been doing things this way for years, Alan. You're talking about turning the whole company on its head. Won't that raise questions?" Greaves' cold laugh echoed through the room. "Questions? The shareholders won't care about the details. All they care about is profit. All we need is to keep the numbers looking good on paper. We'll clean up the mess later." Evelyn froze. Her heart began to race as she realized the depth of the corruption, how little the executives cared for the people beneath them. They didn't even try to hide it. She had been cleaning the offices for years, always keeping her head down and her mouth shut. But the more she heard, the more disgusted she became. This wasn't just about money. It was about control, manipulation, and an unrelenting disregard for human dignity. Evelyn could no longer ignore the truth she had witnessed day after day. For weeks, Evelyn had quietly observed how the executives and managers treated the lower staff, her colleagues who worked tirelessly in the shadows, cleaning floors, delivering meals, and managing the behind-the-scenes tasks that made the high-end offices run smoothly. They were expected to be invisible, to stay out of the way, and to accept whatever scraps were given to them. She had endured it herself, but now, hearing their conversation, the weight of the years of injustice hit her like a freight train. She couldn't just let this go. As she pushed her cart quietly down the hall, her mind raced. Something had to change. But Evelyn wasn't naive. She knew that if she wanted to bring down the mighty empire that Greaves had built, she needed more than just indignation. She needed a plan, a careful, precise strategy. Later that evening, after a long shift of scrubbing and sweeping, Evelyn sat in her small, dimly lit apartment. The room was quiet except for the hum of the fridge and the rustling of the papers on her desk. She opened her notepad, something she had kept for years, a place where she had written down her observations, thoughts, and reflections. It had always been a place to vent her frustrations, a quiet corner where she could be herself. But tonight it felt different. She wrote down the names of people who had been wronged. She recalled the moments she had witnessed, shady deals, unethical behavior, and those who had suffered in silence. The executives never saw her, but she had seen everything. Now she was going to make them see her. She wasn't going to let these injustices go unpunished. "This is just the beginning," she whispered to herself, her hand gripping the pen with determination. As she planned, Evelyn began to craft her strategy. It wouldn't be rash or reckless. No, she was no fool. It would be slow, methodical, and above all, it would be undeniable. She had spent years learning the ins and outs of the company, the schedules, the secrets, the unspoken rules. She knew when the documents were left on desks, when the conversations were hushed, when the eyes of the executives would turn away from the truth. And she was ready to use that information. This wasn't just about taking down the CEO. This was about taking down a system that thrived on exploitation, that crushed the underprivileged under the weight of its corporate might. And Evelyn was going to make sure that system fell. The build-up, the hidden power. Evelyn sat at her desk late into the night, her mind spinning with possibilities. The small apartment that had always felt like a sanctuary now seemed like a strategy room, a place where every inch of the space held the weight of her thoughts. On the walls were pictures of her family, her mother, a woman of humble beginnings, who had always told her that dignity was priceless, and her younger brother, Marcus, who dreamed of becoming a lawyer, though their circumstances always kept him at arm's length from those ambitions. "This is for them," Evelyn muttered to herself, her fingers tightening around the pen. The stakes had never been higher. She knew this journey wouldn't just change her life. It could change everything for the hundreds of employees like her, the ones who lived in the shadows of the towering skyscrapers, invisible to those who held the keys to power. But it would take more than courage. It would require cunning, and she had learned over the years that a clever mind could topple even the mightiest of giants. She had already begun gathering intel over the past few weeks, carefully observing the routines of the key figures at Hawthorne and Beck. She knew that Alan Greaves, the CEO, was a creature of habit. His daily routine was as predictable as the ticking of a clock. His security was tight, but Evelyn had a gift for slipping past unnoticed. It was part of her life's invisible dance, the one that allowed her to blend into the background so well that no one ever suspected she was there. "Step 1, she whispered as she wrote in her notebook. "Establish a silent network." At the core of any revolution, Evelyn knew, was the need for allies, trusted individuals who shared a common vision and could act as the pillars of the operation. But allies within a corporation like Hawthorne and Beck were hard to come by. The company thrived on division, each department isolated from the others, and employees were constantly pitted against one another in the pursuit of performance metrics. To suggest rebellion would be to risk losing everything, and Evelyn had no illusions about the lengths the company would go to protect its interests. But she also knew the power of small acts of rebellion. One leak, one whisper, one person willing to risk everything could cause a ripple effect that could shake the foundations of the company. Her first contact was James, a quiet man who worked in the IT department. He was the kind of person who was often overlooked, much like Evelyn. James had been with Hawthorne and Beck for 5 years, but his ability to stay under the radar made him invaluable to Evelyn's cause. It didn't take long for her to establish a trust with him. She saw in his eyes the same disillusionment she had felt when she first started working there. The sense that something wasn't right, that there was more happening behind the scenes than what the public image suggested. One evening, while cleaning one of the high-end conference rooms, Evelyn slipped a note under the door to James's office, just a few steps away. The message was simple: "We need to talk. Bring your laptop." The next day, they met in a small cafe on the edge of the city, a place where no one from Hawthorne and Beck would ever think to look. As they sat across from each other, Evelyn wasted no time. She knew that if she was going to pull this off, she needed someone who was capable, someone with access to the company's most sensitive information. "I need you to help me get into the company's internal systems," Evelyn said, her voice low but firm. "I'm talking about files, company memos, emails, anything that could expose their corruption. Alan Greaves and his team are involved in things that go beyond just money. It's about power and control over everyone beneath them." James hesitated for a moment, his fingers tapping nervously on the coffee cup. "That's dangerous. If we get caught—" "We won't get caught," Evelyn interjected. "I've been here long enough to know how to stay in the shadows. You won't be exposed." James seemed to wrestle with the decision for a moment longer. But then, to Evelyn's surprise, he nodded. "All right, I'll help you. But you have to promise me one thing. Once this is done, we're getting out. No more working for these people. We do this and we're free." Evelyn met his gaze, a quiet promise in her eyes. "I swear, this ends with them, not with us." That night, the two of them began working together in secret. James sent her files, encrypted and carefully hidden within the company's intranet. Evelyn had never been particularly tech-savvy, but she had learned how to navigate the system in her spare time, enough to access confidential documents without raising suspicion. The documents she found were chilling. The layoff schemes was one of the files she uncovered, a detailed memo on how the company was planning to lay off workers to cut costs, despite record profits in recent quarters. She found another file titled The Hidden Investments, which exposed how the company was funneling money into offshore accounts, all while pretending to care about employee welfare. Evelyn felt the weight of the documents in her hands, as though the very existence of these files was an indictment of everything she had ever believed in. It was worse than she had imagined. These weren't just corporate mistakes or poor management decisions. This was systemic abuse of power, greed at a scale she had only heard about in whispers. But with the documents in her possession, Evelyn's mission was just beginning. Now that she had the proof, she needed a way to expose it to the world without alerting the company to her intentions. She knew it would be risky. Greaves would never let this go unpunished. Her thoughts shifted to her next step: public exposure. The reveal? A world-changed Evelyn's heart raced as she sat in the small corner of the cafe, staring at the encrypted files on her laptop screen. The final piece of her puzzle had just fallen into place. She now had everything she needed to expose the corporate corruption that ran deep within Hawthorne and Beck. Yet, she couldn't help but feel a heavy sense of responsibility settle over her shoulders. The stakes had always been high, but now, with the full weight of the evidence, she knew that there was no going back. The thought of betraying those who had always believed in the system that had given her a chance to prove herself in the corporate world, gave her a momentary pause. She had worked so hard to climb this ladder. But when she thought about her mother's sacrifices, her brother's unfulfilled dreams, and the countless others like them who were crushed under the weight of a ruthless corporate machine, her resolve hardened. She had seen how the company's policies had harmed families, leaving them impoverished and hopeless. She knew that this was bigger than herself. This was about righting the wrongs that had been allowed to fester for too long. James had been the one to urge her to act faster. They had already begun downloading key files, spreading them through secure channels to anonymous whistleblower platforms. But the danger of exposure was growing every day. The longer they waited, the higher the chance the company would catch wind of their plan. "We need to go public, Evelyn," James had said in their last meeting. "If we wait any longer, we might lose our window." She had agreed. It was time to act. With the click of a button, Evelyn uploaded the damning evidence to a secure, encrypted server where it could be accessed by the media and authorities. She had carefully crafted an anonymous email that would lead investigative journalists to the files, providing them with enough context to make the story impossible to ignore. As she watched the progress bar fill up, she felt a sense of dread mixed with anticipation. This was it. There was no turning back now. But the moment the files were uploaded, Evelyn's phone buzzed with an alert. Her stomach dropped as she read the notification. "Urgent. Alan Greaves has requested a meeting with you. His office." Immediately, panic surged through her, but Evelyn didn't hesitate. She shut down her laptop and composed herself. This was the moment she had been preparing for. She had anticipated retaliation, but she had always counted on the element of surprise. Now she had to play her cards carefully. Greaves would be expecting an explanation, and she had to give him one, without betraying herself. As she stepped into the elevator and ascended to the top floor of Hawthorne Beck, Evelyn couldn't help but feel the weight of the company's glass and steel walls pressing down on her. This was the heart of the beast. The office was sleek, cold, and imposing, decorated with the gleaming accolades and trophies that spoke of corporate conquests. Everything here screamed power, wealth, and control. Greaves stood by the massive windows, looking out over the city below. He didn't turn when she entered, but his voice cut through the silence. "Evelyn," he said in a smooth, calculated tone. "I hear you've been making waves." Her breath hitched, but she kept her composure. "I don't know what you mean." Greaves finally turned to face her, a smirk playing at the corner of his mouth. "You know exactly what I mean. I've been watching you." His gaze was sharp, his eyes calculating. "And I'm curious, what's your game, Evelyn? Do you think you can take down a company like this? Do you think you're some kind of hero?" Evelyn stood her ground, trying to keep her voice steady. "I'm not trying to be a hero. I'm just trying to do the right thing." Greaves chuckled, shaking his head. "The right thing? There is no right thing in this world. There is power, and there are those who wield it. You, Evelyn, are a small player in a game far bigger than you realize." Evelyn didn't flinch. She had come this far, and she wasn't going to back down now. "Maybe I'm not a player at all. Maybe I'm just the person who turns the game upside down." Greaves' expression darkened. He walked over to his desk and opened a drawer, pulling out a thick folder. "I know what you've done," he said coldly, placing it in front of her. "You think these documents will change anything? You think the world will care? It's not that simple." But Evelyn didn't need to read what was inside. She had already seen enough. This was the moment when everything would either break wide open or come crashing down. She had made her choice. She wasn't going to let him intimidate her. "It's already happening," she said firmly. "The world will care, Greaves. People are waking up to the truth, and they won't stop until they take it back." For a moment there was silence. Then, Greaves slowly closed the folder and looked at her with an almost pitying expression. "You're playing a dangerous game, Evelyn. I hope you know what you're doing." Evelyn didn't answer. She turned and walked out of his office, her head held high. The battle wasn't over, but the first victory had been won. The world would soon know the truth about Hawthorne Beck. And when the dust settled, everything would change. Epilogue. A world reborn. The next few weeks felt like a whirlwind. The media exploded with stories about the leaked documents, about the systemic corruption, the illegal offshore accounts, and the ruthless tactics used to exploit workers. The company's stock plummeted, and regulatory authorities launched investigations into its practices. It wasn't just one scandal. It was an entire network of deceit unraveling before the public's eyes. Evelyn and James, though still in hiding, watched as the world shifted. People began to take notice and protests erupted across cities demanding corporate accountability. But despite the chaos, Evelyn felt a sense of peace. The fight was far from over, but she had started a revolution. A spark had been lit, and now there was no putting it out. And as she watched the sun rise over the city, she knew one thing for sure. The world had changed. The truth had been set free. The game was no longer the same. Evelyn's story is not just a thrilling corporate thriller. It's a powerful reminder of the importance of standing up for what's right, even when the odds are stacked against you. There are a few key lessons we can take away from her journey. The power of integrity throughout the story. Evelyn consistently chooses integrity over personal gain, even when it threatens everything she's worked for. Her decision to expose the truth is not an easy one, but it teaches us that standing up for what is right can ultimately lead to a better future for everyone, even if it means personal sacrifice. The strength of courage, the journey of exposing the corruption in a powerful company like Hawthorne and Beck required an immense amount of courage. Evelyn didn't wait for someone else to take action. She became the catalyst for change. It reminds us that sometimes being courageous means doing what no one else is willing to do, even if it seems impossible. The ripple effect of small actions, what started as a single action, Evelyn's decision to uncover the truth, snowballed into a global movement. Her actions triggered a series of events that led to widespread change. This highlights the power of small actions. Every choice we make can have a ripple effect that influences the larger world around us. Accountability and power. The corrupt practices of Hawthorne and Beck highlight the importance of holding powerful organizations accountable. In real life, corporate malpractices, systemic injustices, and corruption are real threats. This story underscores the need for transparency, integrity, and responsibility in both the corporate world and society at large. It's never too late to make a difference, no matter how high the stakes are, no matter how impossible it may seem. Evelyn teaches us that it's never too late to take a stand. The change she sparked, while risky, proves that one person, one decision, can have a monumental impact. Evelyn's journey proves that change begins with courage. Courage to speak out, courage to take risks, and courage to fight for what's right. And it's that courage that we all can tap into in our own lives. If this story inspired you to take action, it's time to reflect on your own path. Do you see something in your life, in your work, or in the world around you that needs change? Are you ready to be the catalyst for that change? Now is the time to act. Don't wait for someone else to make the first move. Whether it's standing up for what's right in your own sphere, speaking out about something that's unjust, or taking a bold step towards something you believe in, your actions can make a difference. The world needs more people like Evelyn, people who are unafraid to fight for truth, fairness, and accountability. If you're ready to make that change, start today. What will you do to help change the game? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to receive the next videos. See you in the next video.